If you bought Bitcoin in the last 5 months, chances are you're underwater or at best just treading water. Now, if you bought altcoins, that could be a very different story, probably drowning at this stage because of the declines that the market has had in that same period. Today, I want to update the charts from yesterday, plus answer a few of the big questions. What signals can turn this market around? What signals keep it going down? Of course, look out for the support and resistance levels, the major pivot points. What's the best and worst case scenarios for Bitcoin and cryptos should we see breakdowns of those levels? And what about traditional markets like US stock markets? Are they beginning to see some sort of cracks and collapse, or are we still seeing further upside in those markets? Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Let's just dive straight into it. So the major number we're watching for is consolidation above 108. Another day goes by, Bitcoin closes under that level, but we have seen some of the market sentiment creep slightly higher, even though the price went down slightly. So there is some very positive signs, even if they are microscopic at this stage. That sign is basically the extreme fear that we saw the day before. And I'll stop switching between the white and the black in a sec. That was extreme fear. Now we just got fear, even though the price went lower. So we're getting a slight divergence there. Ideally, as we've been looking at for the end of this month, which we have 8 days to go, price climbs above at least 108 and consolidates above that level. Ideally, above 115. Now, there are a few levels of, above 115 that many other indicators and signals are looking at. One is this swing top here at 116. The other I'm watching for is above 120,000. Now, we have been watching 118, but as the days go on, this diagonal keeps climbing higher and higher. And by today, it sits at roughly 118,800. So very close to the 120, which is where we need to see the price get to and close above to basically regain any hope of hitting a new all-time high and going on some ballistic mission to bigger and bigger prices. Now, the price targets that I had set earlier this year was $122, here it is, $1,000 for Bitcoin that I posted in January of this year. And I'd just like to remind myself of those times and where the price has currently got to in the last 10 months. So a lot of people at that time were expecting much, much bigger things because, well, we just had December that the price ran crazy from the 70s to 100 and nearly 10. And then we had Trump getting inaugurated the few weeks later after that post. And of course, from that time, the price now is basically at the exactly same point of December and January of, well, 24 and 2025. And it's crazy how these markets can unfold over that period when we're going through extreme greed, like in these periods. And then, of course, we're at extreme fear now. So although we're on a breaking edge here, a knife's edge, we do have extreme fear to contend with. And that is sometimes or often in a bull market, a good thing that we get a reset for higher prices. So we haven't seen any of these major breakdowns yet. So what signals can turn this around? One is sentiment. If sentiment stays bad and the price continues to climb higher and higher, then we have good signs ahead that we're going to continue that climb to fresh prices. What signals keep it going down? Breakdowns of key support levels. That's pretty straightforward. And if the trend continues down, well, then you just got to keep running with the trend. The short-term trend is down. Lower highs, lower lows. You can see that with the yellow line here that take up the Gann swings. Top, 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 all lower, and the lows here, low, 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 all lower. So the daily trend is down. On the weekly, it is a mixed bag. Higher highs, lower lows, and it's been going on now for months. So it's been a pretty difficult ride here for a lot of spot holders. You get highs, then the lows, and then a higher high comes in, a lower low comes in, higher high again, and now a lower low. So it's a pretty difficult run through this period, which is why I started the video looking at the last 5 months, because the price is basically exactly where it was. And we could take it back 10 months, 11 months, and the price is still the same. So that leads me to answering this one here. What signals keep it going down? Breakdowns of those support levels. And this is the big one, in my opinion. If we break this 100K level, and you've got a bit of a range because there is a swing low here at 98,000. So right through this period, if this price breaks down from this level, then it, in my opinion, it increases the chances of a macro lower high to form. And that could still mean the price is going to run up. Maybe it comes back and tests 115, 118, 120, but you're probably going to see it running out of steam, and then the price will then collapse from there. But through that period of the run up, what we would want to see for that lower high possibility is extreme greed coming back into the market. And that could be many different scenarios. One, obviously, could be the fear and greed index. That's things starting to shoot up into greed, maybe even touching extreme greed. The other is news headlines and what the sentiment is actually doing, where people believe all of these bulls are wrong and that they were just the smartest, luckiest people in the world to buy this dip, wherever the dip comes in, and they think they're going to win really, really big, running into new fresh highs. That's essentially what we want to see, and you want to see that creeping higher and higher the more the price rises below the previous top. But of course, we haven't got there yet. We haven't got the breakdown of 100. If that does happen, let's keep following it, and we will see that extreme greed start to show its hand once again. So that's my opinion with the best worst case scenario for Bitcoin should it break this 100K. The best case, things hold here. Weekly closes are above the 108. We get a quick move towards the end of the month above 115, potentially even 118, 120. And then we start to see things move even higher for the end of the month. And that shows up in November and December as part of the cycle analysis. Now we have 4 days to go until the end of the week. We've seen the 3-bar signal play out yet again, meaning big red days from the high. This signal, however, is our weekly signal, and it is essentially the 3 red weeks from a high point. Basically, it doesn't have to be the all-time high. Like these areas through here, we've got 3 red weeks, which then lead to further declines. They're known as 3 black crows. And the significance of that is that basically sellers have come into the game and they are overwhelming the buyers. Now, of course, you can get a reversal on these as well, falling 3 method. That's a bullish continuation, but we're not in that scenario at the moment. That would mean you would see 3 red weeks within the price range of the prior bar. We don't have that. We have 3 red weeks, at least 2 of those massive, that have now engulfed the entire move that led up into that all-time high. So 4 days to go. If this also turns red, there is the possibility that we do head down further. And that's why these next 4 days, in my opinion, are very, very critical for the market. Can they hold up above those key levels? This week would need to close above $108,700. So it's a few $100 off right now. 4 days to go, climbs above that, give us the green, and it looks like buyers have at least got some balls left in them to hold this game up above those previous lows, which then reduces the probability of another severe decline. We've seen it here, we've seen 3 here, we've seen 3 there, and I could basically go back 3 red weeks right there and down, 3 red weeks again at the end of the move, and there was still further to go. 3 red weeks here, further down. This one, that was a saving grace. That ran into the banking collapse of March 23, and then you had a reversal bar, a reversal candle that shot the market up. So there is that chance as well. If we get this breakdown, if it is red, a big move higher is basically the only thing that could save that move. Nice big breakdowns and huge moves higher. The buyer stepping back in to show that strength, wiping out all those stops. And we've had that happen already in this cycle with a lot of liquidation events. So it wouldn't be surprising if one of those could happen again. Now, if you're following me on Instagram, chances are you could be getting scammed. My only real Instagram is linked here. And the reason I bring this up, I just want to make you aware, it just happens time and time again. None of these are my real Instagram if you're searching it on Google. So if you do want the real Instagram, only use the links in the video description. I've seen many people get scammed by fake accounts. None of those are real. I did a Q&A yesterday. For some reason, it made the news in one of these articles. But if you do want the real Instagram, that is it right there. Go and follow it, even if you don't want to interact, just so you only have the real one there and you're not getting caught out with any sort of fake accounts that have thousands and thousands of followers, 13,000, 5,000. They're not the real accounts. As mentioned, I am doing a Q&A on Instagram, so if you want to see more of those in the future, follow the account and stay tuned for any more Q&As that I post up on Instagram. So the crypto data, we looked at the sentiment. This is still just hanging in there. We have seen a slightly higher price. The liquidations continue to be roughly $500 million. So the market is still churning over all of those leverage traders, and we're seeing long and short ratio bounce back to the long side. The differential isn't too large. It's roughly 2% at the moment. So we're not in the process of seeing any major turns here. The exchange volume has continued to drop off. So this is not a good sign for the continuation of the bull market. We've seen this continue to decline to 64 billion today, and it's still underneath those tops. The key levels we're watching are roughly 46 to 48 billion dollars for support to come in on the exchange volume. So with all those traders getting liquidated, we still need more fresh money, or at least money churning over in that market, to hold up the 7-day moving average, because this is what has shown up at each of the prior bull markets. 2021, that's the first half of 2021, big moves, and then it was a lower high into the all-time high. Look at what we had here. We had August, September, that's March, that was into that first high, and then it went higher for November, which could have been the, let's say, like a true all-time high, or the highest sentiment of an all-time high. And since then, we've had a lower high. So we really, for the bull market, we really need to see this break back past 100 billion and get above those tops of 130 billion for the continuation of the bull market. Otherwise, it's another sign that interest is dying off for this crypto bull market. MicroStrategy continues lower. Today, it just broke again. It's been the lowest daily close in roughly 6 months. We have to go back to the April tariff crash low to get a lower close. And here it is, just touching 178, closing at 278, closing at 280. Remember, a breakdown of this level then increases the chance we head back to those lows at 230, and a breakdown of those lows really is not good for the market overall. The 50% level was broken last cycle. You can see the all-time high, and it broke the 50% at the orange line. It failed to get back above this 50%, so the 50% of the bear market, or basically the decline, and the rally was very weak, and then it collapsed. This time, it hit a new all-time high. It broke under the orange 50%, so that's the bull market 50% level. It rallied into the 50% of the decline, went a little higher this time compared to last time, and then still collapsed. So here we are again, testing the orange 50%. Breakdown of that, probably likely going to go to 230, and then probably head a little lower as well. Doesn't mean Bitcoin can't go a little higher. It's just hasn't happened in the past before. And if that's the case, it might be a little bit more subdued as opposed to some sort of mega blow-off move, unless MicroStrategy can get back into a stronger position. USDT dominance continues to weaken the crypto market at the moment, more days above the downtrend. Now, I'm using the top, which was the low for the crypto market, or Bitcoin. That was in November of 22. So basically, the highest dominance for USDT was at the low for Bitcoin and crypto, meaning most people had cash, and then they start to deploy it into Bitcoin and crypto to start to try and make some returns. And we're connecting it with another very significant turning point here. That was August. So that was the Japanese yen carry trade low when Bitcoin hit 50 grand. So another thing I'm looking at, just to give us any sort of hope in this market, and I'm not ignoring the fact that the USDT dominance has continued to put in higher lows and break above 50%, which is, in my opinion, the most important level to watch here. 4.75%. We have not seen any breakdowns yet, but giving us just some slight hope. Let's have a look at the June top. So that was the all-time high for the USDT dominance, and then we can connect it over to the August low as well. It's now just underneath that. I don't like doing these sorts of things, but that could be another area that we watch. We could be watching some of the other tops through this level as well. I just think over time, it's eventually going to break these highs, and you're basically just kicking the can down the road to give ourselves some hope. So let's get rid of that. We can even just look at where the market sits and what happened last time. Here's Bitcoin, orange line. There is the all-time high of April 2021. USDT dominance was basing. Then Bitcoin collapses, USDT dominance skyrockets. Bitcoin puts in a new all-time high, barely, and USDT puts in a higher low. So you're starting to see a divergence here. Bitcoin going higher, but USDT still holding on to more than it did previously. That is a bearish sign for the market. USDT dominance started to rise, and then of course, Bitcoin collapses from that point. This is the area that I want to pay attention to right now. Here is a spike, rally, a little decline that then led to a Bitcoin lower high forming. Remember, we talked about that through this chart earlier on. A breakdown of 100 could lead to a lower high. So let's take it back to USDT. And you see this, obviously USDT will fall because that money's going back into Bitcoin, rallying to a lower high, very weak signal, sitting on support again, and then it starts to climb back and take back that dominance. Meanwhile, Bitcoin continues to collapse, and of course the crypto market collapses as well, sits on more support, and then the USDT skyrockets. Take a look now. We've got a big spike. We've got the market heading higher. Maybe we start to see this roll over, which would give more excitement back to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But unless USDT dominance breaks back through 4.75, ideally under 4.6 now, because that's where the trading range was established, then we could be heading towards another higher low, and then USDT dominance takes that away again. What would happen in this time when that's going down? You'd start to see Bitcoin rally. And remember the two levels that we're watching, 115, 120. Got to see some breaks above that, closes, weekly closes above those levels. Otherwise, it's running into a lower high, and also USDT dominance is running into a higher low. So bullish USDT dominance, bearish Bitcoin. Now, I touched on the indicator suite earlier with the predictive cycles, the composite of 5 and 10 years, which I've discussed before, why we're using those and not a 4-year cycle. We are getting a divergence at the moment, meaning the blue line, the actual line, what's happening in Bitcoin price now is breaking lower with lower lows compared to what happened in 2020 and 2015, which at that time was running higher. So I think this is another important sign to watch, that we're beginning to see that divergence. If it was going to be following Q4 with this big green quarter, green October, what the probabilities have said, well, then we should be seeing this run higher. And at the moment, well, it's continuing to break down. I think if it continues to break, hits these lows that we see back in June and mid-June, roughly around that 98K, the levels we're watching, then we are most likely heading towards a complete divergence from what's happening with the Bitcoin curves, and we're not going to get to those bigger prices to the upside. The sentiment on the stock market is in fear, just barely above extreme fear, yet the price is still near all-time highs. This has been the story of the S&P 500 throughout this entire grind, and in yesterday's video, I showed how the S&P 500 has continued to grind higher. You can see here in the red, while Bitcoin has gone on bear markets. So it's not a matter of the S&P 500, if it runs to new all-time highs, that Bitcoin must follow suit. Earlier on, that's typically the case, that we also talked about at the beginning of the cycle. If the S&P 500 is showing some strength, like it did back here, 2023, 2024, just beginning to break out into new all-time highs, then it's most likely Bitcoin is going to follow suit. Fast forward 3 years from the low, next month is going to be that 3 years, and we're starting to get a little bit on in this bull market for Bitcoin. And you can see here, 12 years ago, is 2013, the S&P 500 was running higher, 13, 14, 15, started to come down. Meanwhile, Bitcoin ran higher, and then for all of 2014 was down and found a bottom in early 2015. So the S&P can continue to grind higher, even head higher with this AI bubble that's continuing higher that we can see in the charts. Meanwhile, Bitcoin does not need to follow suit, and you can also see it in 2018 as well. Big bear market for Bitcoin, S&P 500 top, big correction, another top, big correction, and then another move higher towards mid-2019. And on the 5-year cycle for the S&P 500, we are heading down again almost to the day. There is the S&P 500 in the white, the current action. The red line is 5 years ago. we've got another day and another almost continued replication of what happened 5 years ago. The next period is a bit of a move higher and then it starts to decline again into mid-November. So we're still going through this choppy period according to the 5-year cycle that we've been measuring since April, so the last 6 months. I'm just still interested to see if this continues, because the next move is basically a grind higher for the rest of 23 and 25 and then early 2026. Now on the gold front, we've obviously seen gold buyers go nuts to try and get gold before it hits 5 grand. It didn't hit 5 grand. It may do in the future. And we've seen lineups and punch ups and all sorts to try and get gold because everyone's freaking out that there's not going to be enough supply. Meanwhile, gold has now corrected 8.5%. Silver also corrected. And if we're going to go through this local top scenario, then there is the possibility of a 20% correction. 22% is the past, 20% another past, 21% from the previous old all-time high. Here is an 8.6%, so pretty similar to what's already happened for gold. This is the GFC correction, 2008, big correction for gold while everything else was going down as well. That was 34%, and then prior to that, 25%. So it may have already done its 8% like it did back here before another blow-off move, or we've got a higher chance that there's somewhere around that teens to 20-ish percent. 20% takes you down to 3,500, 12%, 13% takes you to 39, 38. So somewhere in between that could be a good area at the moment. Obviously, we'll keep watching. Following the charts is the best way to go here for gold. And the reason I talk about gold is that there are some thoughts of, well, if gold is starting to pause, then Bitcoin needs to catch up. So there's a theory around that. And I don't necessarily believe that has to be the case. I think it is cycle by cycle, up and consolidate. You can see here with Bitcoin and gold, the white gold here and Bitcoin in orange, they're basically moving together and pull back. Then Bitcoin's moving and gold is also moving together, and gold consolidates, Bitcoin pulls back. Then they start to head almost together. You've got gold pushing higher, consolidating, and then beginning to push higher while Bitcoin's going down. So they're in the opposites there. Bitcoin and gold head up together, gold consolidating a bit longer, Bitcoin finding a top. And now gold has taken off and Bitcoin has obviously possibly done its dash and pulling back at the moment. But prior to that, you've got gold going nowhere, Bitcoin skyrocketing, and then huge distribution at the tops here. And then you've got this lower high form for Bitcoin, lower high form for gold, and they both came down in the bear market. And that's the point I want to make here is, what if this is actually a down period for gold? Not the end for gold, but a longer pullback than any of these sorts of grinds prior. Then that doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin has to now catch up and go higher, and gold is also going to catch up and go higher, because this period next, and I'm not saying it has to be, but it could be a bit more of a consolidation that takes a long time. This one took 3.5 years. White in the background here, this one took best part of a year. And then you had these other ones that were between 4 and 6 months, like we've just seen recently. So if gold is pulling back for a longer period than what it has done previously, because it has had such a significant run, I don't know if Bitcoin has the firepower here to keep pushing that much higher and then wait for gold to also have its next move higher. Because, as I mentioned, it could be a move like this. Time will obviously tell, but I think it's important just not to be blindsided and say, well, now it's gold, now it's Bitcoin's turn, and you just have this perpetual one catching up after the other forever. It doesn't work like that, and you only see that for brief periods. And in the case of gold being, decades old, a brief period in gold's lifetime is a few years, because it has been around for decades upon decades. So in that case, where does it leave altcoins? Well, Bitcoin is still the second highest out of the top 5 I have here in terms of gains for this cycle, starting back in November 22, second only to Solana. However, Solana did all of its gains within the first 18 or so months of the cycle, and since then has basically gone nowhere, has not been a great investment, because you want investment to go up over time. And in the case of altcoins, well, 1.5 years is a pretty significant amount of time, especially when they only move for several months. XRP is still lower than Bitcoin. Binance, Ethereum, all still lower for this cycle. Are we going to see this next move higher? Well, the others chart doesn't think so. Yes, these cryptos are not within the others dominance, but at the moment, others is still going down, and we haven't seen any sort of revival yet from Total 3, which does include all of these cryptos except Ethereum there. So they're all still heading down, but sitting ever so slightly on the support here at 950 and 930. So again, if we see breakdowns of these key levels, which it is coming to a head now, you got the orange line, there's your 50-week moving average. You've got the yellow here, that's my consolidation above the previous highs at $950 billion. I think I said million earlier. 930, 950, orange line is also at 930. Well, then that could spell another piece of disaster underneath. Otherwise, let's spin it to a bullish sense, something a little more positive for those holders. Holding above this line and then a move higher, that's what you want to see. You just don't want to see a breakdown of the 50% level. Now, today's Thursday. We have the altcoin report coming out for you guys. Yesterday, you would have got your Bitcoin reports. Links only in the video description. Don't click on anything else out there. This one will get you your reports, name, email address, and you'll be on the list for the next ones that are coming out next week. So lots to do for Bitcoin over the next 4 days. We've got a good start to today's move. Look at this little bit of green. That's nice to see. And remember, for the weekly, we definitely want to see a close above 108,700 bucks. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget the Instagram link is down below. Don't get scammed out there, and make sure you're following the right account if you choose to follow over there. There's the link, and I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Till then, take care. Peace out.